For the first time since CSGO came out, or at least in my recent memory, Steam has overhauled the community market. If you're not aware, last night they released a beta build of the new layout for the community market. And you don't have to take too long of a look at it to know that they put quite a bit of work into this project. And luckily for CS2 players, it seems to be made and optimized for CS2 first, with other community markets coming later on. CS2 is the priority, so that's pretty cool. Now, it is 100% a quality of life update, but as we know, Valve doesn't do things just to increase quality of life. It usually has a purpose. Because this update, combined with all of the other updates that they've been releasing over the past year and a half or so, I think definitely leans in a certain direction in terms of Valve's plans for the future. It looks like Steam is finally trying to capture some market share. Wow, who would have thought of that?
A little bit of these knives right here, and maybe a few up here, just decrease a little bit for where they can start to be sold in the community market and not be seen as, a completely stupid sell.
But I believe ultimately it will all hinge on one thing, and whether they address that or not will probably lead us in the direction of what they're trying to do. So let's walk through what's actually been happening, right? We're gonna go back to July of 2025, and right at the beginning of Season 3, Valve released the trade reversal update, allowing you to reverse a trade if you'd been scammed or you simply regret your trade after 7 days. Now, it sounds like protection on behalf of the consumer when you look at it upon first glance, and that's absolutely correct. That isn't not what it does, but it also severely hurts the third-party markets. Due to limitations of their system, I imagine, or by making it outright intentional, whatever their MO is. Any consumable item, stickers, charms, cases, trade-up fillers, these cannot be used in-game other than being equipped when you trade an item, which is, of course, how you receive items from third-party markets. So that automatically kind of just forces some action to go back to the Steam community market, whether consumers want to or not. Yes, you could buy your cases for a little bit cheaper on third-party marketplaces, but now you have to wait a week in which to open them. You want to do a trade-up, you have to wait a week. So you could either buy it off Steam and do it now, or buy it off a third-party marketplace and do it a week later. So if you're not just purchasing a skin or purchasing a knife or a pair of gloves, a lot of the extra stuff has been pretty much monopolized by Valve essentially, especially in this world where everyone's instant gratified to the fucking max. They're not going to be able to wait 8 days to open their fucking terminal. And then, of course, you know what, you love it, the Great Depression, October 23rd, 2025. Of course, when the knife trade-up update was introduced to the community for the first time. And if you wanted to participate in that first day in which you were able to sell 7 days later, immediately get those knives off for a nice, pretty profit, well, you couldn't unless you bought the reds on the Steam community market. But that's not the main reason. I believe the main reason was to actually make knives accessible. I did the math in a video at one point. What the knife trade-up update did in terms of cases is it made your expected knives 1 in 200 as opposed to 1 in 400 previously. So just the incoming supply of knives, especially when all of the reds were $5, this created a ton of new knives, bringing down prices quite steeply, quite heavily. If you were not here before the knife trade-up update, a lot of the knives, right? Phase 2 was very popular in China, Gamma Dopplers. These knives were exorbitantly expensive. You couldn't buy one if you're an average player. Gut knives were going for like $400. The knife trade-up update was a good thing in practice because what it did is it made knives more accessible and it brought a lot of value surrounding the knife ecosystem. Reds became more valuable, pinks became more valuable because of that, and then downstream, everything became more valuable, cases gained ROI, and a lot of these knives, they were $6,000 on the surface, but they weren't actually moving. You actually have a liquid, high-value market now with the knife prices being so low and so affordable, which at the end of the day, I understand a lot of people lost money there, but it's a good thing in the long term of the market. That's always been Steam's MO. The 7-day trade hold back in like 2018 caused a lot of upheaval immediately, but ultimately long term created a healthier market that allowed the market cap to get where it was this year and in 2023. That wouldn't have existed without these updates coming into play, creating a healthy, long-term, trustworthy market. Skins.com is the newest sponsor on our channel. They have just released a P2P trading platform looking to compete with the best players in the space. If you don't want to wait that long, they do have an insta-sell feature on the site in which the rates are the best I've seen, just straight up. When the market is down, everything is on sale, And with the deals you're getting on skins.com, you could start your position basically up 20 to 25%. Try out skins.com and be a part of the future of CS2 skin trading. I will have a code soon, so stay tuned for that. And then, yesterday, they overhauled the marketplace. So let's take a look at what they actually did. Because what made third-party marketplaces so useful for the general consumer, Valve has now added that to their marketplace. But there is still one key feature that kind of prevents it from actually fully flourishing. Now, upon clicking the market, that iconic vertical list that takes up way too much space, you'll notice is immediately gone. It now features a grid layout. The image is much more prominent. And it's still sorted by popularity, but you do have a few more filters to filter by when looking at the main homepage of the community market. You can also sort by name, interestingly, quantity, which was not a feature beforehand, and of course popularity. And also to make browsing a little bit more easy, guns are now no longer separated by wear. You just click on the weapon you want to look at, and it will show you all the wares that are available to the specific gun in which you're looking at. The same nice thumbnail with a description and name of the gun is still right on top, and below that you'll see the graph has changed quite a bit. Namely, they've added a volume feature. You can see how many guns are being purchased on a daily basis. You could compare that over different time spans, a week, a month, a year, or the lifetime of the skin. And you can see all 5 wares and their respective prices moving with one another, which is super useful. You don't have to no longer open different tabs or go back and forth to see, and maybe you could spot a gap in pricing that you could take advantage of. If you want to just look at one specific ware, you go on the top and you click one of those little tabs there, and it'll show you just the graph of the ware you want to look at and all the listings of the gun you want to look at. The filtering has received an overhaul, I would call it, but there wasn't really any filtering to begin with before. If you don't want to filter by where, you can look at specific float ranges, which is fantastic, especially for people trying to do trade-ups. You can filter by pattern, so if you're looking for a specific pattern of a gun for a pattern-based weapon, you can do that now. You can also click on the 2 little sidebars, and from there you can see all of the available stickers and charms that are on the guns in which you're looking at. So if you want a gun with stickers or charms specifically, you can click those and you'll be able to see just the sticker and charm listings on the community market, which is awesome. The float values are front and center. The pattern values are now front and center. No longer do you have to hover over each one when scrolling through it. And there's no more pages. You just scroll and it keeps going on forever. Right, small things, but the sum of these things are incredible because what we've been using for the past couple of years, while we've been used to it, has sorely been lacking, obviously, by just the volume of features in which they've added today. But the biggest update is when you click on the skin itself. Here you'll see 3 inspect images straight up generated immediately for you as soon as you load up the page. If they have stickers, they'll show up. If they have any wear, they'll show up, and you can look at the front and back side of the weapon. Now, this is the main draw for a lot of marketplaces, and this is a huge update for the quality of life of Steam. No longer do you have to inspect in-game, click out, inspect in-game, click out, inspect in-game, click out, and you can look at it, and you can look at the item when you're on a computer that doesn't have Counter-Strike loaded. I mean, there's 3 images per weapon, and there's like a million fucking weapons. God knows how many images they have to generate, but the speed in which it happens is extremely fast, and it's very impressive. So they didn't do anything innovative, right? Everything that they've added is existing or has existed on a third-party marketplace, but they're just going to do it better because they have control over the market, as we just discussed. Not necessarily by consumer choice, but by consumer force. But that's the game, baby. They own the market. It seems like Valve is positioning themselves pretty well competitively in terms of the market share of CS2 skins as a sector. And them adding this right after these 2 large market share capturing updates, not a coincidence, definitely intentional by way of Valve. And I saw a lot of people on Twitter seeing their concerns about trading being banned now all of a sudden because of the Steam Community Market update, which I believe is just fear-mongering because A, we know Valve just made a response to the NYAG about transferability being a right and them doubling down on not getting rid of it, and they just overhauled the community market. Valve has to posture themselves for lawsuits, but they know third-party marketplaces are the reason why skins hold the value in which they do. And as we've also discussed, you need specific guidelines in place to allow withdrawals and to allow balances over $2,000. Valve knows values come from third-party marketplaces and the ability in which to withdraw. And so long as transferability is a right and that's something they stand by, well then you're fine, because transferability is how third-party marketplaces operate. But they also don't want them to take the market share away, because every sale happening on a third-party market is not 15% for Steam. But, key word, the 15% tax. That is going to ultimately stand in the way of Steam capturing any significant amount of market share for high volume items. And is it possible that Steam gets rid or lowers their 15% tax to something smaller, maybe 5 to 10%? I think so. The reason I think so is obviously they've changed their revenue models, right? The terminal probably brings in a comparable amount to cases, although we obviously wouldn't be able to perfectly estimate it. But also the armory and all passes go right to them. And now they're no longer paying creators on a per open model. They're paying creators on a flat rate based on their submissions. So if you upload a skin, you get $3,000, whatever it may be, example. No longer do you get residual checks every month for how many cases were open. So that's a larger share of revenue going to Valve after, they pay off those $3,000 they give to each creator, which happens in a day probably. So they could probably afford to lower their tax a little bit. Do they want to do that? Will it ultimately lead to more volume happening on the Steam market? I think so, but who knows if they actually go through with that. We'll have to wait and see, but I do think that's really their only way, and that's the last obstacle in which they need to hurdle in order to create a monopoly or something of the sort on their platform. Right, Steam funds will always have to be there. As we just spoke about, you now have to open cases on Steam. You need to buy keys on Steam. You need to do trade-ups on Steam if you want them to happen right now. So there is, need for Steam funds. So I guess you could keep the 15% because of the fact that they supply things that people need, but those would still exist without the 15% tax. Raise the armory pass by $1. Raise a key by $1. Take your 15, put it down to 10. I think it's a no-brainer. I haven't done the math, obviously, but which is also why I don't understand why the fuck they won't update the fucking armory. But also, what if that's gonna be your moneymaker? You gotta take good care of that baby. And I also think the last takeaway of this is that people are going to become generally a little bit more educated because the Steam community market is the primary place for most casual players. A lot of them don't know third-party marketplaces exist. A lot of them don't want to use. They're scared of them. They don't trust the platform in which you're getting your items via trade. So still a lot of this stuff happens on Steam, stuff that in this community you're not going to be completely aware of because you're not the casual average player. But those casual players just are probably going to get a little bit more educated. They're going to know what float values are because they're right there. They're going to know that guns have patterns that before they didn't know previously. I'm not saying it'll happen immediately, but knowledge is going to flood into the casual market when it comes to skins. And I do think it helps their positioning in regards to NYAG in terms of the skins themselves being collectibles. Advanced filters, something that people like to focus on as a hobby, right? Search the market, things of that sort. So at last, I do think it ultimately hinges on the fact that Steam tries to at least lower or maybe eat some of that 15% tax. I think that will ultimately do the best for the long-term state of Steam community market if they really want to prepare some type of takeover. Until then, I think that a lot of these changes will not really increase the market share in the ways in which they've hoped. The other two updates, the knife trade-up update, the trade reversal update, that did the majority of the work. That got the market share that they wanted, probably most of it anyway. This is just a quality of life update. The Steam community market's been the same for the past 12 years at this point. So obviously something was eventually going to come, and I don't think you could have asked for any more. It looks perfect, to be honest. There are bugs. It's a beta, so can't really blame them for bugs. Just report them, and in time, I'm sure they'll be fixed. I haven't noticed anything myself. The graphs are a little bit weird because they show NA, but they should just show the current price on the line. That's really the only thing that needs to be fixed, and I imagine that will be fixed. But let me know what you guys think of the new update. I think it's fantastic. I've seen a lot of you talk about it, and a lot of you seem to like it. I haven't heard really any negatives about it, but maybe that's just because the old one was rough. But it's new, so of course, everyone's going to be a little bit biased. We'll see how it plays out in a few months or so, and we'll see if Steam actually tries to take some significant changes when it comes to those taxes. Because if they do lower that Steam tax, I think they're going to far and ahead run away with control over the market for pretty much every gun under $2,000. There'll be no other intelligent option to use but Steam. So I'm excited to see how it works. Other than that, peace.